Hey y'all, Comical Cosplay here with my next YouTube video in my series, A Beginner's Guide to Cosplay. In this video, we're going to be going over fabric pieces to your costume, whether you're going to be purchasing them, modifying them, or making them. If you're going to be making or sewing the fabric pieces to your garment, there are a few things you should consider. The first recommendation I would always make is to look for a pattern. Having a pre-existing pattern to help you begin on your garment makes everything much easier, and even modifying a pre-existing pattern isn't too bad. Drafting a pattern from scratch is very difficult, and I wouldn't recommend it for beginners, but if you really can't find any pattern that would help match, I would recommend using the duct tape method, and don't forget when you use this method to always add in seam allowances. The next thing to consider when using fabric pieces is to look at what kind of fabric you are going to be, should be, or could be using. The type of fabric you choose is very important. The kind of fabric you use is definitely something to take into consideration because it'll affect how your garment sits and drapes. It'll affect whether there's stretch room in your fabric or not. It will affect whether the ends will fray or not. It'll affect whether or not the fabric can hold a crease, whether it's shiny or not. Also whether it will stick to an adhesive or not. There are a bunch of considerations to make, so this is definitely something important to look into. The nice thing about having a pre-existing pattern is on the actual envelope itself, it'll have a list of fabrics that they recommend you use to make the garment. And lastly, don't forget to always check for online coupons and for fabric sales. Remember that cosplay is an expensive hobby. Certain fabrics will go on sale at certain times of the years, so it's best to take advantage of this. Next, we're going to be going over tips if you want to modify your fabrics. The considerations will be taken into account will be based around what modifications you will actually be making to the garment. The first consideration we're going to take into account is if you need to change the color of the garment. Dyeing fabrics is a great and less intimidating skill to learn while starting out. My first piece of advice would be to check what fabric the garment is made out of. If it's made out of any synthetic fibers, you need to get a special dye, unlike if you were to use wool or cotton or any of the natural fibers. There are specific synthetic dyes for synthetic fabrics, otherwise the dye actually won't hold to the synthetic fibers. My next piece of advice would be to read any reviews online about the different types of dyes, the different brands, and the different types that each brand carries, as well as look for any extra tidbits on any special techniques you might need while you're going to be dyeing your garment. For example, if you need to do a gradient dye. The next modification of a fabric piece scenario we're going to take into account is if you're going to be adding a trim or a design to the fabric. There are a few different ways to add a trim, border, or a design to your fabric, and they all fall under different skill levels, so there's bound to be something for everyone. Some of these techniques would be stitching or embroidering. They could also be using heat and bond or any other fabric glue to stitch on pieces of fabric to another piece of fabric, or you can also use fabric paints. And lastly, we're going to be going over some considerations that you need to look at if you're going to be purchasing your fabric piece. One of the first things to do is to make sure you check what fabric the garment is going to be made out of. By doing this, you'll get a small indication of how warm it's going to be, if it's going to be too hot to wear to convention or not, and you also get an idea for how it's going to fit and sit. You're also going to want to consider if the sizes run true or if they run big or small. One of the best ways to figure this out is to look back at the reviews that you read earlier and to see if anybody mentioned how the outfit fits in those reviews. And it's also very important to remember that fit is more important than a number. Always be honest with both yourself and with the seller when you're going to be purchasing a garment online, and always be sure to check the seller's size guide. This is especially important to remember if you're going to be ordering from a different country, as the sizes will vary from country to country. Think of it like this: nobody's going to see the size on the tag of your clothing while you're wearing it, but they will see that muffin top if you order a size that's too small. Also, you're going to be a lot more comfortable wearing something that actually fits properly. Well, that's it for this video. Until next time, when the uncanny adventures of Comical Cosplay continue.